Carlos and Pete, thank you so much for joining us. You're working on life-changing, humanity-changing stuff at Leo Flight. Tell me, like, what led you to this? How did you get here? How did you get to the point where, like, I'm going to build a flying car?
Yeah, that's a great, I'll tell you kind of my background real quickly, and then Pete can tell you his. And I think that, they kind of meet in the middle. But my background is in automotive design. And since I was a little kid, I was fascinated with aircraft, with flight. My father's a classical musician. And when I was a kid, we were always on planes for the different events he was playing at. And I just fell in love with the feeling of flight. And cars, for me, were kind of an approximation of that experience of travel and of speed. And I learned about kind of the artistry that went into cars, after high school, and went into a career in automotive design, sort of under the umbrella of industrial design. But I always had this dream in my mind, sort of back of my mind, of could this transfer in the future to other types of more advanced vehicles, and could this transfer to a flying machine? And recently, sort of the tipping point has been happening with energy storage, with batteries, with propulsion systems. And propulsion is really where Pete comes in. He really is the tipping point on this, what really enables our vehicle to work. And I found him through a contest he's been involved in called the Boeing Go Fly Prize. And so he was highly visible from that. And I looked into what he was doing with propulsion, and I'd been sort of sketching out ideas of designs, but I knew that I needed the propulsion design chops to create something really transformative, because I had a gut feeling it wasn't that the sort of big solution isn't these like multi-copter, big, huge drone designs with many propellers. I always sort of intuitively felt it was beyond that. And what Pete was doing really caught my eye. I felt like, wow, he's cracking the nut on this. And I reached out, and we got to talking, and we both kind of merged on this idea of personal transportation. And so that's kind of from my end of it, but maybe Pete can give you his background as well.
Yeah, Pete.
So my background, I was in defense for a long time. I had a defense company for about 14 years. We did military contracts doing solutions to roadside bombs and things like that, stuff, built weapon systems that saved lives, not took them. But we were heavy into electrics and things like that. But my passion had always been for aviation. I had started a small aviation advertising company back in the 90s. And sold it off in the early 2000s, and then kind of had this passion to do personal vertical flight starting in about 2006. And I was trying various gas-powered engine designs, and just wasn't really going to work. That technology was hard to control, let alone loud and fumey and gas guzzling and all of that. So when I started working with drones, probably in 2011 or so, I started playing with some of these electric drones, and they were very nascent at the time. But started developing some propulsion ideas, and learned what I could. We built a heavy lift drone that won a little competition in 2015. I actually flew a person in a quadcopter in 2015 also. It was covered by Popular Science. So there was, some work I had done while I was running my defense company. I, do these little side projects, for personal flight, but mostly in the area of propulsion, and just started iterating and learning through that. And I sold my defense company in 2018, basically sold my building and the assets off and everything, and had a little bit of money. So I started this company called Electric Jet Aircraft that was really, the whole idea was to build personal electric jet propulsion driven wearable aircraft. So the idea of like an electric jetpack was really sort of core. I did a patent on that. The patent was awarded last year, and we were able, in that time, I was able to basically build a few designs of the electric jetpack, in addition to what I was doing for the Go Fly competition, which was a slightly different approach, but still sort of an encapsulated propulsion system. When Carlos called me, and I thought, you know what, this is perfect, because if we can prove what I'm doing with an electric jetpack, a flying car is actually a little easier because you don't have to wear it. You don't have to carry it, so it carries you. So, and Carlos and I mean, he's just the best partner in the world. I mean, we have just gotten along so great. I've never had a better partner to work with. We get so much done. We're both really good at what we do, and complement each other in our areas that we don't know stuff about. And it's just been a perfect partnership. We've been working together now for 2.5 years, and just super exciting work. And his designs are just beautiful. And if I was to design a flying car, it wouldn't look anywhere near as cool as his. but at the same time, like he said, the propulsion system is sort of at the heart of it, and it makes the design flexibility possible. And we really believe we've kind of cracked the nut on the whole idea of a flying car. I mean, between his design and my propulsion, the combined efforts of what we're trying to do, I think nobody's even close. And, we talk like, I'm sure a lot of other flying car air taxi companies talk the same way. The difference is that 95% of them are all doing like these, basically a big drone slapped on an airplane kind of concept, and or an electric helicopter, effectively. And it's not what people see or envision when they think about a flying car for the future. It's just not. But we're actually doing it. We're actually flying stuff. We've gotten stuff off the ground with people in it, and we feel like we're just funding away from being able to get this dream into a reality, and into, sort of the accessible car in every driveway kind of dream is within reach now. And so that's the background of how we got where we are today.
What are the barriers to success?
Oh, there's lots of them.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Well, the biggest one, I think, the biggest ones I think we've already solved, which is, does your idea work? And can you prove that it works? I mean, a lot of people, computational power right now is high enough that you can design an airliner on a screen and be about 99% sure that when you fabricate it, it's going to fly. That stuff does work. When you're talking about less conventional things like what we're trying to do, you really have to build it to prove it. And we were able to raise a pre-seed round that got us funding to build our sort of skeletal prototype. It doesn't have the skins on it. It's basically a full-scale, single-person prototype. And we've already been able to take off the ground with it, both empty and with a person in the cockpit. We've tethered it to this point because we only have one prototype, but we're hoping over the next few months, as funding comes in, we're able to test that and fly it around and do demonstrations with it just to prove the propulsion works. Everything else is knowable. And so we've already validated the aerodynamics design with an outside firm. All of that's within reach. So the big thing was, I think, solving the propulsion question. Does it work? Will it work? Will it transition the way you want it to? All of that. And that's what we're in the process of solving now. But the other obvious biggest one, which is the hindrance to any company at this point, is funding. Just having enough resources. I think what we've been able to do is be really efficient with what we have. And so that efficiency allows us to go a lot further on a lot less than maybe others in the industry. But that's still going to be a challenge going forward as we get further and further into this project. And I'll let
Carlos. I was going to ask you, Carlos, like, what has the response been from investors? And what is the pitch? Like, I can't even imagine like what it's like to raise money for something like this.
Yeah, well, kind of piggybacking off or continuing on what Pete was saying, that oftentimes the first questions out of people's mouths after "that's so cool" is, well, what about regulations? What kind of pilot's license will I need? Where can I fly this? All really good questions. And a lot of times we found that investors who don't know much about the space get really freaked out by that because they don't have an understanding of the regulatory environment. We have an amazing advisory board member named Sue Gardner, who has an extensive background both as a pilot and as an administrator within the FAA. And she actually wrote the current sport pilot and drone laws. So she knows how to write the legislation, implement it, get it put into action. So she's helping us to sort of tailor our approach. But what's really cool is that our vehicle itself really is it's more practical, it's safer, and it's more high performance than both conventional aircraft and helicopters. So actually the certification process is simpler because we can show that this is safer around people and property to operate. And those are really the two big things that we have to be cognizant of and the FAA is really looking for. And a lot of times also people don't know that even with conventional helicopters today, you can actually land just about anywhere with one. There are restrictions around major cities like here in New York City. There are designated spots for that. But if you want to land at someone's house or in a business or something, as long as you have permission most of the time from the landowner, you can do it. People don't realize that. But obviously a helicopter is extremely expensive and complicated, and it causes a lot of environmental disturbance, and it's dangerous in many aspects. So what we're offering is a much safer, more kind of human-centered solution for that kind of door-to-door travel. So the investors that do see that are extremely excited about it because they see the potential for mass adoption. They see this could really be car 2.0, and that personal ownership plus sort of enhanced sort of fleet use, like first responders, like how could it change, surgeons getting to the operating room, or a first responder at a fire or some kind of other emergency, or tourism, how can this open up possibilities where you can take off and land an aircraft and you could get to places that never before have been accessible by car or foot or aircraft. So it really opens up all sorts of possibilities. And the investors that do get it are excited, and some of our investors come and turn wrenches because they're really hands-on and really excited about the vision. We love all of our investors. They really share the vision with us. So it's been awesome.
How often are you asked this question? Why isn't Elon doing this?
Not that often.
He's kind of busy right now.
He is busy right now. That's for sure.
He's busy doing some interesting things on Twitter, but he has said that he I believe has a preference for like the boring company stuff and like going underground. He has concerns about how things are managed in the air, but we think all those things are addressable, and that it's going to be a long time before air congestion is an issue. But not that we shouldn't plan for that, but that it's a lot bigger up there. So, Pete, did you want to answer that one? It's kind of a fun.
Yeah, Pete, I'd love to hear your feedback on why Tesla or Elon isn't.
I'd love to hear
on this.
It's funny. My company's called Electric Jet, and there's a line in Iron Man 2 when there's a little cameo of Elon Musk in Monte Carlo talking to Pepper Potts, and he talks to Tony, and he says, "Hey, I've got an idea for an electric jet." And Tony says, "Well, we'll make that work." And I've always found that interesting. Like, he's got this idea for more like an electric, like a corporate jet, like an airliner kind of jet, not what we're doing. But I personally see what we're doing as something that an automotive company, and whether it's Tesla or somebody else, would find very interesting as an acquisition target, at some point when we're ready. I think that's a definite possibility as an exit strategy. And I think Elon may be just sitting back to see which one wins, which design idea wins, and then just swoop in and acquire it, just like he did Twitter. It's sort of the idea. Well, hopefully better than Twitter. I mean, we're more of a value than Twitter at this point. But at that point, I think we're going to be in a position to, maybe scale through partnership with a larger company. So it may not be why isn't Elon doing this? It's when might Elon do this? Kind of thing.
Right.
It's interesting too that Elon didn't invent rockets and Elon didn't invent the electric car. He invented nothing in terms of the core technologies. What he did, and I'm sure they've got lots of patents and inventions around the idea of manufacturing, around the idea of low costing something, getting something to where you can produce it. And that's really the advantage of somebody like what Elon Musk. I mean, a lot of people credit him with things that aren't actually true about him. He didn't invent the stuff that he's doing at its root, but what he did was he invented the ways in which it's possible to become mass adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's critical here. Will there be millions of flying cars? It'll take a long time, to where you have the numbers of automotive production like you have for ground vehicles and air vehicles. That's a long ways off. There's an inherent fear of flying for a lot of people. A lot of people will never fly. So there's going to be a natural sort of ceiling for how big this industry can get. The question is that interesting enough to somebody like an Elon Musk? And can we use that level eventually of production capability where we're producing hundreds of thousands of something versus, a couple thousand of something? Keep in mind that, aviation, the largest manufacturer of just sheer numbers of aircraft are somewhere between Boeing and Cirrus aircraft. Cirrus makes single engine planes and some small light jets. Boeing obviously makes big airliners. Neither of them make any more than 400 or 500 units a year. That's their production line. And then you go to automotive, and on the low end, you've got Lamborghini and Ferrari that make between 8,000 and 10,000 units a year. So somewhere between 500 and 10,000, there's this gap. And that's where we kind of want to be. We want to be in that 2 to 5, maybe 6, 7, 8,000 eventually. Where we're at the low end of automotive, but definitely the high end of aviation production. But that's still, if you sold 10,000 aircraft a year and distributed them around the world, the likelihood that two of them would ever even see each other is really small. So the potential for this market is massive, even with the inherent ceiling of the fact that not everyone will want to fly.
Yeah, I wonder how far away are we from like 10,000 people? That exact thing. How far away are we from 10,000 of these distributed around the world and they're working and all of that?
If we have our way, probably 8 to 10 years.
That's not that far off.
No, we intend to deliver the first 100 units in 2025. That's our goal. And we intend to get to production of about 2,000 units by 2028 per year.
What is driving the two of you to take this big of a swing? Because this is a massive swing.
It's the massive opportunity, I would say. And we have a vision. We have a path to get there. And we don't want to watch someone else do it. We feel like as much as people go, that sounds too good to be true, I think people also hold the other thought in their mind that this is inevitable. And that, that vision of the Jetsons that people have dreamed of since the 50s and before is really a cultural dream that we have that's sort of like someone's going to do it. And, sort of like all of the predictions of submarines and rockets and AI and all this stuff. It's all happening because the dream had to precede the physical manifestation of it. So we just don't, we want to have fun and do this. We love this work. We absolutely love trailblazing and in creating this. It's just been a blast. And by the way, Pete, thanks for the kind words. And I think it shows how in sync we are, that we both have Christmas trees of some sort in the left-hand corner.
I know you're both very, very festive.
We're very festive.
You're very festive today. Hey, how long until these things just drive themselves? Or fly themselves? Longer, I should say.
Longer. In the U.S., it's going to take a while longer. You already see demos happening in other countries of fully autonomous vehicles, but we've chosen to have a human pilot on board and to go semi-autonomous at first, and wait for the technology to mature and for culture to acculturate, to get comfortable with the idea of having a fully autonomous object you get into and it whisks you off somewhere. So
I imagine
it's a little farther off, but we want to get in the game. And we can use, I was just going to say that, wanted to get in the game sooner before that's ready and sort of transition into that. And we'll be able to use the same vehicle and have it be fully autonomous, so.
Yeah, I imagine the biggest barrier running into with investors and then, future and potential customers is safety, right? I'm sure you're getting tons of safety questions and how safe is this? Is it safer compared to an automobile? Is it less safe? How do you answer those questions just around like, hey, I want to live past this flight?
Yeah. Well, safety is an area where we really shine. As I said, I don't know if actually I said it before we started recording, but our vehicle really is safer than a conventional airplane and safer than a helicopter. It doesn't use rotors on top the way a helicopter does, so it's safer to be around for one. It's safer to stand next to because we're using what Pete has innovated, this clustered electric jet system. It's internal to the vehicle. It's embedded in the wings, and so there's no exterior spinning objects that could harm you. There's no danger that the vehicle could tip over, like the Pan Am building disaster in 1977 here in New York, where a helicopter tipped over and the rotor blades hit the ground and 5 people were killed and more injured. You don't have those kinds of dangers around our aircraft. And we have incredible redundancy in our system. The system that Pete's invented has, it's going to have 200 of these small electric jets that are really small, very hard for any kind of object to go into them, like a conventional propeller or jet engine. And there's incredible redundancy. You can lose a third of them. Is that right, Pete? I believe you can lose a third and still stay in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're using wings. What another thing Pete's system allows is a lot of flexibility in the aerodynamic design of our vehicle. So we actually do have aerodynamic lift that we're creating with the body of the vehicle. So unlike a multi-rotor drone type craft that has no kind of wings, and if something's damaged, one of the 4 propellers goes out, you're kind of hosed. You're going to probably spin out and fall because there's no kind of aerodynamic lift. So we do have aerodynamic glide. If something were to happen, some catastrophic thing that knocked out all of the electrical and the jets went out, you'd be able to glide. And we're also going to have a ballistic chute on top, which is possible as well without having, rotor blades that could get tangled in the absence of those. So airbag systems on top of that, emergency flotation. We're looking at a retro rocket system as well to shed energy when you get near the ground, something like the Blue Origin spacecraft. When it got close to the ground, it had those retro rockets. So there are several layers of safety to the vehicle that you don't get with conventional aircraft. So,
Pete, can you speak more to the technology and this propulsion thing that you kind of touched on before, and kind of how far along that is and everything else you're working on there?
Right. So we developed our clustered electric jet system a while ago, and then we were awarded a DARPA contract with the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to develop an electric jetpack and the propulsion system for it. And so we were able to sort of hone down on the specific issues necessary to have these clustered electric jets all sort of act as a single engine. So even though they're individuals and they're like 5 inches, 4.5 inches in diameter, there's an array of them, and they all see themselves as part of one engine from a controls perspective. But they operate independently, so you have inherent redundancies. The engine itself gets a signal from the flight computer, just like a single engine would. But the array would get that same signal. All the engines would operate together under that signal. If you had any reason for any one of them or two of them to go out, they don't affect the rest of them. So you have the sort of hive mind of this propulsion system distributed, and it basically flies like a multicopter with, let's say a quadcopter has 4 engines. Well, we have 4 decks of engines. And each deck of engines operates like a single engine for flight control, but then the redundancy is within each deck. And so if you lose an engine, the other engines will work just a little bit harder to make up for the thrust that's lost. And it's sort of inherent in the design architecture. So, but yeah, each one is basically a little turbine. The reason we call them jets, we have little turbine blades, and it's not a turbine in the technical sense. It's not, moving a gas or using a gas to spin it. It is actually an electric motor connected to these little metal fans. They're spinning at like 60,000 RPM inside a Coanda effect sleeve that produces what you would call a jet of air. It's not burning anything. There's no combustion. There's no compression, but you are getting that jet of air, just kind of like a water jet. Anything that takes a large intake of air and compresses it through a sleeve and pushes it out at a higher speed is considered a jet. And so that's why we call this an electric jet, is we're using this electric motor with these turbine type blades, not propellers, but actual little angled blades that are metal, spinning at very high RPM to accelerate that air and get net benefit effect of what you would have with just spinning a propeller. And so each one is very efficient. We've been able to just absolutely tweak the heck out of these things and maximize efficiency. There are similar things in the hobby grade market. Same size engine would produce maybe 8 pounds of thrust at best, and we're producing 11.6 out of ours. So almost 50% more efficient than hobby grade. And what that allows us to do then is have these engines powered efficiently with batteries in a way that allows us to configure this so that it fits within an automotive footprint. And there's enough thrust there that we have plenty of redundancy at every corner of the propulsion system within every deck, and the ability for one engine or multiple engines even to go out, and the rest of them have enough net thrust to be able to make up that difference if there's any kind of a catastrophic failure. And as Carlos described, our safety system is multi-layered. So you have redundancy as an inherent thing. We can still fly again with like 60 engines out of 200 out, which is preposterous to think you would have like a third of your propulsion go out for any reason. But if it did, you would still be able to land comfortably with a full payload, by the way. And you also have the ability, because of the fact that you're compact, enclosed propulsion, you have the ability to use a ballistic parachute, as Carlos mentioned. So all of these, the redundancy of the electric jet propulsion system, in addition to the size and compact nature of it, make the other safety systems even possible. Whereas if you have big propellers, you don't have that ability. Where's your ballistic parachute going to go? And atmospheric conditions being what they might be, even if you create a little nacelle or whatever that blows your parachute above your propellers, if the aircraft tips or anything happens to the props, they can still go into the parachute and kill you. So there's a lot of inherencies that are associated with safety in the propulsion design.
What have your conversations been like with regulators and governments?
Well, this is a good time actually, I think, to talk about our regulatory strategy. So we have attended FAA meetings, and we're part of ASTM, which is a group that creates standards that the FAA adopts, that are recognized by the FAA and adopted by the FAA. And the FAA is now creating a new category for aircraft that are more compact like ours, that are four people or less, basically less risk as a result of less footprint and mass. And electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, EVTOL for short, is what our vehicle could be considered, because it is electric vertical takeoff and landing, even though it's quite different in the way we do it from others. But EVTOL will become a bucket under this new regulatory structure, and it'll not only allow you to certify to get your pilot's license with only about 20 hours of training, but it will allow for limited commercial uses as well. Tourism, say like photography, aerial photography, things like that. So that's a new sort of latitude that's being offered within the framework of the law, because the FAA is seeing these innovations in eVTOL aircraft and seeing that the law needs to adapt to it. So that's essentially the certification path we'll be taking. But even today, you could, if you wanted to fly one of our aircraft, you could do it under specialty sport aircraft licensing. But that extra layer of limited commercial use will be pretty cool. And of course, there's the regular type certification path that could be a little down the road that would allow even broader commercial activity. So we have kind of a stepped plan to get where we're going with it.
What are the environmental impacts, if any?
Yeah, well, I would say that we actually have favorable environmental impact. Obviously, being zero emissions and electric, that's a big one. Oh, lost Pete. But the fact that the vehicle is more automotive in size, it means that, so we're also developing a fast charging unit that is like a landing pad you can land on. It's called the VertiStop. And you'll be able to essentially place that like on a parking garage, an existing parking garage, existing building, parking lot. So environmentally speaking, our infrastructural footprint is very low. We don't have to create heavy construction to create big vertiports and essentially tiny airports in urban centers and things like that. So not only is the vehicle itself zero emissions, but the infrastructure to support our vehicle can be miniaturized and have less of a footprint on the environment, on resources, on materials, to actually achieve scale at a large scale. So something I didn't mention either that you may have been wondering too, is just what Pete was saying about technology and how our system is unique. Those little electric jets favor high speed. So we have a big advantage in that we can travel at 200 miles an hour and get 250 miles of range with a single charge with current lithium ion batteries. And so as batteries improve, we'll be able to improve that a lot, maybe double that amount in the near future. So, that really, it opens the door when you combine that plus the infrastructure and charging solutions to say, not only go from like New York to Boston in one hop, but LA to San Francisco, and with one fast charge in the middle in like an hour and a half. So then you don't need to go to the airport, because why get in a car to drive to the airport, to go through the whole process at the airport, get on a plane, go to your destination, then get in another car and go, so it'll really efficiency wise. And that also is an environmental benefit when people aren't getting on, airliners and burning jet fuel, because that's a huge pollutant. So there are several layers to it.
How big is your team?
Want to take this one, Pete?
Well, it's not a hard question because you're looking at them. I mean,
this is our core team right here.
Yeah, this is it. We have some part-time people, a lot of vendors that do some of our fabrication work and things that we kind of sub out to for welding and some of the hardware stuff and manufacturing of our components. But other than that, this is it right now. Part of the reason we're trying to raise capital, we had some interns and a couple part-timers over the summer that were full-time during our big build for the LX1 and got that flying. But now that we're kind of ready to go into the next stage, we're trying to raise capital to build our full prototype, hire permanent staff, and establish some facilities that we can use to do everything we need to do.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I can't think of too many more interesting companies to be working on or problems to be solving than flying cars. And I wish you both the best of luck, and we'll have you on again, I'm sure, as things progress. But seriously, thanks so much for taking a few minutes with us here today and kind of explaining what you're working on. It's really, really incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity as well.
Also, for your audience, check out leoflight.com. That's just leoflight.com. Check out our videos and just catch up and keep up with what we're doing. We update it pretty regularly.
Awesome. We'll put that link in the description too. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Clint.